Hello YouTube, my name is Bowtied Media, and today I've got a review of Steven's album Akrasia. And as a bit of a disclaimer, I've listened to a lot of music over the years. Obviously I do a channel like this, and there are about 20 albums all time that I would ever give a 10 out of 10 score. And Steven's debut album back in 2016, Sincerely, is one of those 10 out of 10 scores. So there may be a little bit of bias here, but I haven't also loved his more recent smaller projects, and I think this is a bit of a one-off. I'm not an absolute diehard Steven fan, but this is something that I was super excited about. Steven is what I would consider one of the perfect examples of a good mix between acoustic and electronic music production. So much so that he's kind of become almost a poster child for the indie-tronica genre that kind of describes that feeling of both. And this album, Akrasia, is really no different in that style. It is almost perfectly a mix of acoustic and electronic music. So, Akrasia, what does it even mean? It's defined as a state of mind where someone acts against their better judgment by the lack of strong will. The idea that even though you want to do something that's beneficial for you, you don't have the will or power to do it yourself. And narratively, this entire album is based off this idea of Akrasia, which is why it's called that, and all the songs kind of relay into this idea of a weakness of will. But this project is 11 songs long and 38 minutes, which makes it just a little bit longer than his debut album. I believe Steven is at his strongest when he is creating music that has a kind of quiet, minimalistic beginning that builds into this epic kind of grand narrative production-wise sound. Very similar, and I am talking about songs like Crossfire or Sincerely, based off of his 2016 album Sincerely. I Never Stay in Love, the second track off this album, is the perfect example of that as well. It's intense and emotional at all the right times when it needs to be. It's a perfect balance of production that even has the sounds, that kind of leaves a sting with you the entire time listening to it, and it's really the only sound that I have stuck in my head after listening to the entire album, even though it's the second track of 11. I think this is the best track off the album and his best since Crossfire. I don't think it's better than Crossfire. I think obviously that was a big one-off and a beautiful hit from Steven that I don't think he'll ever really be able to recoup. But this song is also beautiful, and it's great. Sadly though, this song is followed by what I believe to be a pretty big mistake. Narratively, Tracer is kind of a mess and shouldn't really exist on this album. Steven hits super hard with emotional tracks like the one I just mentioned, I Never Stay in Love, and songs that we'll get into later like Delilah. And the fact that this is just a song about a video game character, not even about a single video game, it's just, I don't understand where it plays into it all narratively. You go from such an emotional high in I Never Stay in Love, and the lyrics that surround that, to the first real lyrics of the song that say, I fuck around in your spawn with a pair of pistols. It just is a dissonance that I think doesn't work. And while it does fall into the idea of Akrasia and the weakness of will, and he talks about playing the game so much and being in love with the Tracer character, it doesn't fit super well with the rest of the album. And while the production is actually kind of solid in some areas, it's got that nice kind of trap tribal feel to it, it just feels like so different than the rest of the project. And that can be a great thing in other circumstances, but it just doesn't work here. There really is no depth to this song, and I feel like it should just have been a standalone single and not on this project. I actually think this whole project would have felt better and sounded better cohesively if this one wasn't on it. Making a hard turn again, we get to Delilah, which is the most raw and emotional song off of this project without a doubt. Steven notes that the persona of Delilah is actually a meaning of the unknown or full potential of oneself. And when paired with the visual representation in the music video by cross-dressing, it kind of really emphasizes and shows the struggles that Steven has with his own mind and soul, I guess, personally. He's not really sure who he is, and he's trying to discover that by any means necessary. I really like the idea that Delilah is trying to break free, break out of his body, and really become the person that Steven wants to be. But the chorus talks about how society is free to let him do that, but also mean enough to push it back. It's a tug of war within a social context that is played out within the mind and personality of Steven. But with the peak that is Delilah, the song right after Alien doesn't really need to exist. It's saying all the same things that Delilah is, but at a more surface level and with an upbeat kind of trap production Alien and Idiot are sandwiching Delilah and just feel like they struggle with the same sense of irrelevancy. I don't know why either Idiot or Alien kind of exist on this album, especially right in front or behind Delilah when it speaks the same language, just either substantially better in Delilah or worse in Alien and Idiot. It feels like Steven really knocked it out of the park with Delilah and had to create two other tracks that kind of talk about the same things at a more surface level and something that more audience can relate to and something that they can just put on and don't have to really think about it. They feel like two tracks that are for a less profound audience that doesn't really want to engage with the musical motifs and themes. Again, I want to reiterate that Delilah uses that persona of Delilah to express a loss of self and identity, where Idiot comes in and just says, yeah, I'm an idiot, and just says it over and over again in the chorus. Yeah. Although, on the flip side, production-wise, Alien is actually quite strong, and I really like it to the sense where it almost recovers the lack of really narrative depth for its production quality and mixing. This is another example of one of the songs that kind of starts quieter and goes into this bigger build that really gets you going and feels like this epic narrative. I don't want to stay on this track for too long, but When We're Sober is subtly one of the most well-produced tracks on the entire project. It's not big and loud, but the kind of reversing sounds and the almost subtly steel drums that feel a little muted, they're all clean and crisp and they work so well. I didn't love the lyrical content here. It was pretty cliche indie-tronica stuff, but again, I just wanted to highlight the production on this song specifically, and if this isn't a standout for you, just go listen to it. I think it's probably my third favorite from the entire project. Again, with those indie-tronica tropes, songs like Lost Animals, Voice Memos is an example of one of those, where you have a voice memo or call to someone, or it's a voicemail specifically, and then you have this kind of raw, almost natural recording sound where it sounds like you just put an iPhone down on a piano and sang and put it to it, and I mean, it's an okay song, but it's just like your classic indie-tronica stuff that's really not trying to be anything different. Lyrically, the song is very deep, where it talks about a lot of things and these big ideas without really actually saying anything. It's not making any statements or addressing any big topics. It's kind of just saying stuff that feels deep and sounds deep. Hell of a Night is another beautifully produced song, and it's got this glitchy experimental finale that pairs so well with Steven's regular production style. This is the wrap-up for the album, and it feels like a wrap-up for a stage of life for Steven as well. He proclaims that he's going somewhere extreme that he's never been before, a change of pace and or location and or personality in life. And this is a stark contrast to Stray Nights, where he was kind of conflicted and confused about whether he wanted to be a ghost or be in the limelight of fame. But to me, it appears that Steven has made up his mind, and he's choosing fame with this extreme sense. It can go one way or the other, but I'm seeing it as if Steven wants to be more in the limelight and really address his musical career in full swing. I really like that Steven used the same key and a similar melody to I Never Stay in Love for the last minute and a half of this song and the album to kind of take everything that was all over the place and wrap it together in a neat bow tie and just kind of be done with the album and put it all together and make it something that's really presentable. Overall, Steven has some gold with tracks like I Never Stay in Love and Delilah, but when he relies too much on his indie-tronica tropes, songs like Tracer and Lost Animals just fall flat on what he's really trying to do. Throughout the entire album, I thought the mixing and production quality was top-notch, something substantially better than what was already good in his 2016 album, Sincerely. I would have liked to see Steven kind of go for some more emotional depth in this entire album, but that's not to say that there isn't at least some semblance of emotionality in a lot of these tracks, especially the two that I named earlier that are great. I think this album is pretty good. It's got some gold, and yeah, it has some duds. And it has quite a bit in between that I'm still, even now, not entirely sure where I really go on it. But I definitely know for sure where I land on this album. And that would be that this album, Steven Akrasia, is going to score a 7. But thank you guys so much for watching. I have been Bowtied Media. If you agree or disagree with anything that I'm saying here, let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked, and let me know what your thoughts were on this album. I will see you guys in another video.